Hello, welcome back. It's another edition of the Daily Fix. I am Stephen Serda. It is Wednesday, March 12th. Welcome back into Foolish Club Media. It's another day of NFL free agency as we eagerly await some of the bigger names to find new homes across the NFL. See if the Chiefs can continue to beef up the roster with the key additions that they've already made in the free agent class. Joey Bosa signs a one-year deal with the Buffalo Bills. That feels like it's a big one for the pass rush market, something I'll get into a little bit on today's show. But before we dive into everything, I want to remind you to please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we are doing right here on Foolish Club Media. Head over to our YouTube page, where you can find the latest episode of each season that was posted this morning. Rocky and Kramer breaking down the Chiefs free agent moves, breaking down the NFL draft. You don't want to miss what they're doing over there on Beach Season. So head over to our YouTube page, subscribe, check that out. But plenty to get to on today's show. Again, if this is your first time on the Daily Fix, a few quick topics. Not going to keep you too long around here, but Kansas City Chiefs restructure Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones, freeing up cap space for their free agent additions. We'll get into that on today's show. What that means for the outlooks on extensions for players like Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. Obviously, the Chiefs are prioritizing Trey Smith right now. And then the pass rush market. Now that Joey Bosa is off the market, what does that mean for a player like Charles Omenihu, the last remaining Chiefs big name free agent? And why I think there's an opportunity there for the Kansas City Chiefs. But as I already mentioned, the Kansas City Chiefs freed up some meaningful cap space this morning. They restructured the contracts of Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones, creating over $49 million in 2025 cap space. The space and more is what the Chiefs needed to get under the cap to sign their free agents, including Jalen Moore, Christian Fulton, Elijah Mitchell. From Arrowhead Pride's John Dixon. Before the move, we estimated the Chiefs had between $39.8 million and $44.8 million over the salary cap. But with these moves, now Arrowhead Pride estimates they have between $4.6 million and $9.7 million under the cap, likely about $7.4 million under. So once they make all that stuff official, we might have some more clarity on the Chiefs, like actual real cap number. But this was something that we've been talking about for weeks. We knew this was something the Chiefs were capable of doing. We knew this was part of the plan heading into the offseason. And it would be nice to get a Trey Smith extension locked into place, because that could potentially free up some more cap space for the Chiefs to make another move or so here ahead of the NFL draft. But it is still getting a little tight with the free agent additions and players like Jalen Moore and Christian Fulton to name the big additions here. But that's Patrick Mahomes' contract. The Chiefs have always been able to restructure that and free up money, and they will absolutely rework that deal within the next year or two, as we just saw the Bills do with Josh Allen. The Chiefs have already done this for Patrick Mahomes multiple times. Moving some money around from Chris Jones was always an option. I've seen a lot of people mention Jawan Taylor. That's not going to happen just based off of his contract terms. But this was the move that the Chiefs had to make to free up this cap space to sign their free agent players. So big move for them, important move. And now really it's about what else the Chiefs can do. Can they find another cost-effective free agent right now out on the open market without a ton of cap space moving forward? But then it's also about making sure that you can fill the roster holes that you have to here moving forward. So big move for the Chiefs. And we'll see what happens with Trey Smith. I think that's the biggest thing that could be holding up the Chiefs on cap space. And, you know, it's easy enough to say, like, oh, just get the extension done. They should have been working on this already. If they're franchise tagging Trey Smith, prioritizing this long-term extension for him at guard, you knew you were going to trade Joe Thuney, then this thing should have already been done and locked into place. But these things can be complicated. So hopefully we get a Trey Smith extension done soon, because that would be nice to free up some cap space. But it would also be nice to have a little bit more clarity on two future contracts for the Kansas City Chiefs that are going to be wildly impactful contracts for the Chiefs moving forward. And that's superstar cornerback Trent McDuffie and defensive end George Karlaftis. Both of them being drafted in the same draft class, obviously. They are eligible for their fifth-year options, and the Chiefs have to decide if they're going to exercise those options by May 1st. I would imagine that's going to happen for both of them. Now, that, again, has salary cap implications if they choose to do that. But what could free up more salary cap spending is if the Chiefs can work out long-term extensions. I don't think Karlaftis is necessarily going to get an extension this offseason, but the Chiefs, after they get this Trey Smith extension done, they should absolutely prioritize trying to get this early deal done with Trent McDuffie. And, it's possible that maybe even McDuffie wants to wait, but generally players just want to get their money in case of injury or something like that. They don't want to wait on long-term deals. And as we've seen across the NFL, just ask the Dallas Cowboys. When you drag out contract talks and extensions, the price only goes up. It never goes down. It only ever goes up because there's always a team out there that is willing to pay them more than whatever you're offering when you're trying to negotiate these types of contracts. So, the biggest hurdle right now, I think, is the Trey Smith extension to a Trent McDuffie deal getting done. But now the Chiefs don't have a ton of cap space. But again, if they could find a way to navigate some of these contracts and get some of these things in place for future years, they can move cash around. That could help things with the overall long-term outlook. And right where I sit right now with McDuffie and Karlaftis, it's like, I do think that these guys should be priority extensions. Like, McDuffie is a superstar cornerback. I think Trent McDuffie is one of the most underrated defensive players in all of the NFL. And the Chiefs defense doesn't work without him. Like, we saw them go sign Christian Fulton because they knew they needed cornerback depth on the outside. And it's not to say that Trent McDuffie can't compete out there, but Christian Fulton, Jalen Watson, and then Trent McDuffie being his Swiss Army knife type of move all around the defense type of playmaker makes you feel a lot better about the Chiefs secondary moving into 2025. So McDuffie is obviously the priority. He is a cornerstone caliber player in my mind for the Kansas City Chiefs. But George Karlaftis has gotten better each year in the NFL. And I think he is a significant piece in a pass rush market that is constantly exploding. And Myles Garrett just got paid an absolutely outrageous amount of money. Like, George isn't necessarily on that level, and George isn't even necessarily what I would call like a superstar player or anything like that. But he's improved each year in the league. He is a difference-making player for the Kansas City Chiefs. They've gotten far more out of him during his time in Kansas City than they have out of Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who might wind up having a bigger role next season. We don't know. But I think McDuffie and Karlaftis are going to be priorities for me. It just seems like lofty expectations to assume the Chiefs would find a way to get all three of these deals done in one offseason. Like, I simply don't see that happening. But what also concerns me right now, and I think the biggest issue with the Kansas City Chiefs roster currently, is like, I love the free agent additions. I love that they're addressing direct needs. They're bringing back key players and the young players at that. Like, we saw Justin Reed go sign a deal with the New Orleans Saints. For some reason, the Saints just love bringing in former Chiefs safeties. It was because Dan Sorensen, Tyrann Mathieu, and now Justin Reed. I don't know why New Orleans just, they played for the Chiefs, said they're a safety. All right, we're going to go sign them. But now that Justin Reed's gone, Charles Omenihu is the last big name Chiefs free agent still floating around out there. I would have to imagine Charles Omenihu, like, when you look at the stat sheet, only one sack last season. He was coming off the late season ACL tear, wasn't available until the back half of the year. But if you're just looking at the box score, you might think like Charles Omenihu didn't have as big of an impact for the Kansas City Chiefs as one would believe. But Charles Omenihu was wildly impactful for the Chiefs because of his ability to move inside and outside, his versatility along the defensive line. And he fits the prototype of what Steve Spagnuolo wants along that defensive line, in a pass rush guy and a guy that can play the run really well. And so maybe this is, Omenihu is out here saying, like, I feel like I played well down the stretch, even if I didn't have massive sack numbers, and I feel like I should be getting more looks on like a serious long-term deal as opposed to just a 1-year deal similar to like what Joey Bosa got with the Buffalo Bills. And I understand that from Charles Omenihu's perspective. You want to get paid, and Charles Omenihu is a younger player than Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa is 29 years old. He's been in the NFL for 9 seasons and is seemingly always hurt, and still managed a 1-year, $12 million deal with the Buffalo Bills. I understand where Charles Omenihu is coming from in that regard, but he's a 27-year-old player and has the ACL tear. He's coming off of late season production and postseason production, where I think he showed up a lot more when you watch things closely than he did necessarily like eye-popping numbers. But he was still really impactful for the Kansas City Chiefs. And if they can find a way to get Charles Omenihu back on a 1-year deal, and it could wind up being cost effective because maybe his market just simply isn't what he thought it was going to be. They find a way to bring him back. They absolutely know how to maximize him as a player, get him back on a 1-year deal. And then all of a sudden I feel a lot better about the Chiefs pass rush heading into 2025. And then you turn the page to the NFL draft, and the Chiefs have basically addressed every significant need on the roster heading into the draft. Now you can just evaluate talent and draft guys that you have the highest grades on, and draft the guys with the most potential to step in and find a role on your team and find a way to try to be a difference maker and be an impactful player right away. I think that's the best case scenario for the Chiefs heading into 2025. Now, I am again surprised that Charles Omenihu is still floating around out there, but I have to imagine it has to do with the fact that his market just simply isn't what he thought it was going to be. And so we'll see what that winds up meaning for a player of his caliber. And we'll see what that winds up meaning for the Kansas City Chiefs. I would love to have Charles Omenihu back on a cost-effective, team-friendly deal if they can wind up making it happen. Again, they don't have a ton of cap space, but there's always ways to maneuver that stuff. A Trey Smith extension would go a long way in that regard. And hopefully they wind up getting these deals done with Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis at some point here in the near future. But the Chiefs are certainly spending money this offseason. We can't say they're not addressing the issues on the roster. But thank you guys for listening and hanging out with me today. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Again, latest episode of each season is available on the feed, so make sure you go check that out. Also, Brian's World making its return later this afternoon. Brian offering his thoughts on the Chiefs free agent class and everything that we're still, focusing in on for the Kansas City Chiefs as we head into 2025 and they look to bounce back from their Super Bowl loss against the Eagles. So make sure you stay on the lookout for that. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Fix. I will talk to you guys then.